What is going on, everybody? We are back at your boy Smo, and today we've got a very different video. And because 3 weeks away, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl come out, I'm so excited. Diamond was actually my first game as a kid, so this brings back a lot of memories. So I'm very keen for the new games to drop, and I wanted to go through. It's gonna be a 3-part video. It's gonna have 1, 2, and 3, and we're gonna go through each starter and then an ideal or recommended team for that starter line, and then based on that, we've gone through. I've looked at different typings, good stats, make sure it's like rounded with physical and special and defensive. Gone through, taken a bit of time, looked at what team can work well together. Haven't gone through all the gyms and things, just kind of rounded out to beat most typing, so you haven't got any glaring weaknesses, and kind of tick all the bases with each team. So let's get straight into it, starting off with Turtwig. So obviously, as the starter Pokemon you want to run, obviously he's a grass type, and then he evolves into Torterra, being grass ground. Really good offensive typing. Earthquake is a fantastic move that Torterra knows, and it does really well because it beats steel types, it beats electric types, it beats rock types. It does really good in general as a move. Obviously, the glaring ice type weakness is a big letdown. On the other hand, then we beat the ice type weakness with our fire type, and that is Magma. Assuming that this is the Platinum Dex and not the Diamond and Pearl Pokédex from the original, and obviously there's more Pokemon coming in underground. I've tried to refrain from using that, because I don't really know what they're going to add to the underground system. We know that Houndoom's there and a couple others, but I didn't really want to go into and expect that this Pokemon would rock up. So we've just gone with one that I know is in the Platinum Dex. We've gone with the Magma. He's just a special attack. Obviously, he evolves into Magmortar, which is a fantastic Pokemon. Big special attack, kind of all round. Opposes, covers that ice type weakness that Torterra has. Finishing the triangle of the 3 standard types, I've actually gone with a more bulky water type, because so far it's 2 quite offensive Pokemon, one being a physically and one specially, obviously. So I've gone with Gastrodon. Obviously, it's not the best Pokemon, and I could have gone Quagsire as well, very much the same. Both kind of physical or just special, bit of a mix, but more of a supportive, tanky water Pokemon with that ground type. So it is obviously a second ground Pokemon, but because Torterra is not weak to grass or water, it doesn't make a difference for what Gastrodon or Quagsire are, because they're not weak to it either. Then they're weak to grass. They lose the electric immunity, which is really handy, because you don't want to have like 3 electric immunities. You don't want to have a flying type that's weak to electric. You don't want to have another water type. So if you get the ground immunity that isn't doubling up on a ground type, I know they are, but the weaknesses aren't. So that's what you want to look for. You want to look for what weaknesses a Pokemon has when you're adding it to the team. So adding Gastrodon or Quagsire as the bulky water support Pokemon to stay alive, take a lot of resistances, only got 1 weakness, which is really handy. So just gotta be careful of those grass types, which we can obviously get rid of with Magma, and then maybe a flying type. I've chosen a fan favorite Pokemon that you do get in the game throughout the story originally. I don't know if it's changed, but in the original Diamond and Pearl and then Platinum, you get given a Riolu on Iron Island just before the 6th gym. So you get a Lucario for just playing the story, which is fantastic. He's a great mon. Obviously, he's a steel type and a fighting type, which everyone should know by this point, but great offensive, great mixed attacker, quite quick as well. Can play like close combat, Metal Claw, or Ice Punch and things. You can use move tutors, probably more TMs now. On the other hand, you can play like Aura Sphere and Dragon Pulse and things like that. Dark Pulse. So you can play definitely physical, definitely special, and definitely mixed. And that's why I've got him here as a mixed sweeper type role, because obviously Torterra is physical, and I said Magmortar is special. You want someone who can adapt to maybe what your team is lacking. If you can't get a Magmortar and you go with something else, then maybe you can play a special Lucario, or you're just coming up with a lot of defensive gyms. Maybe you're coming up to a steel gym and you need like a especially defensive attacker, so you use Aura Sphere, which could be really good. So it kind of just balances out the team a little bit. Obviously, he's a steel type, so he's weak to fire, fighting, and ground. So adding a second fire weakness with Torterra. So that's where Gastrodon's going to play a big role in being that fire resistant, having water, and then maybe a ground move as well to beat that. Being a steel type, obviously Lucario does have a lot of resistances. For a quarter times weak to rock. Dark is neutral now post 4th gen, whichever one it was. 6th gen might have been. He's weak neutral to Psychic because he's a fighting type. Obviously, Bug doesn't do much. Dragon doesn't do much. Obviously, Lucario is still quite frail, but because he's got a lot of weaknesses, he does have a couple of weaknesses and a lot of resistances. He is kind of can maintain his own, can stay alive despite having quite frail defenses, but he's mostly there just to be the sweeper. Because we now have 2 weaknesses to ground, which is obviously Magmortar and Lucario, we wanted to add a flying type. So I've chosen Togekiss. I know a lot of people will love Staraptor, and I think Staraptor is a great Pokemon. My favorite bird, like starter bird, in my opinion, is my favorite, 100% Staraptor. But Staraptor is another physical attacker Lucario most likely will be a physical attacker just because close combat is a huge damaging move. And then you can put it with other physical moves. Maybe Earthquake as coverage or Ice Punch is fantastic. So things like that make Lucario want to be a physical attacker, especially when he can learn Sword Stance, which is phenomenal, especially in those later gyms, which are quite bulky. But adding Togekiss is a little bit more bulk than Staraptor. Obviously now being a fairy type as well, get a couple more resistances, not just the normal flying standard. So he is still weak to lightning, which is why I wanted, electric, sorry. So I wanted the 2 ground types, so then we don't have 2 electric weaknesses as well as 2 ground weaknesses. So having Gastrodon and Torterra as electric resistances is fantastic to have a flying type like Togekiss on your team. Obviously, Fairy, though, instead of normal, is weak to poison. So we also have, obviously, Lucario there, who resists poison 100%, which is fantastic. Just another little bonus of being a steel type. Whereas if Togekiss was a normal type, fighting is neutral. And there's quite a few fighting types or fighting moves that are learnt in this game. So that kind of just takes up another spot where Fairy is also resistance against fire, which is a pain, and normal isn't. And obviously, Staraptor is quite offensive with close combat and things. But the special attack and the more bulk that Togekiss has, I think, is much more beneficial, especially also being a fairy type. Cover things like fighting, dark, dragon, all those things that are tough later on, like the Elite Four and things, play a bit of a better role being a special fairy rather than a physical flying. He's not fighting, but he has close combat, so fighting. And finally, I've chosen a Pokemon that probably a lot of people would switch out or choose something else, but it was hard to find something that wasn't a huge weakness. Maybe could choose something like Sneasel or Weavile, but then you got another fighting type weakness, which you don't really want. But it might be actually now that I'm thinking about it, it might be a better option to go Weavile, because you do have 3 then fire weaknesses, which is annoying. But obviously Torterra is ground as well, so can kind of hold his own against the fire type. He is quite slow, but can still Earthquake on a switch or something. Lucario obviously is fast, but still weak to fire. If you add Weavile, who's ice, it's also again weak to fire. I kind of wanted a dark type to balance out, or something along those, something a bit of a broad type. Obviously Garchomp would be great, but Garchomp is another 4 times ice weakness, and you don't want to really use pseudo legendaries because you don't get them till late game. So I wanted to put in Drapion. I know, his only weakness is ground, but that's 3 ground weaknesses. I know it's a lot, but in this game, there's not really any grass types. Obviously, this is Torterra this time, but in other teams, well, not any grass types that really resist ground. There's Tropius, which you get quite late in the game, normally on the Battle Resort. Roserade is weak to is poison, so neutral on ground. Then again, also weak to fire or ice or flying. Grass has so many weaknesses. And then adding a Drapion in who is Poison Dark, which is fantastic. Gets rid of the new Fairy types. Gets rid of other grass types. Dark is good for Psychics. Like, it's just a decent offensive type with especially quite good moves like Cross Poison or Night Slash. Big crits, big damage with Drapion. But having that 3rd ground weakness is a big letdown. So maybe you could change it out for something like Alakazam. I try to use newer Pokemon as well, not just like all the Gen 1s like Gyarados and things that are in the game, a Champ and whatnot, or Gengar. He's also weak to ground, obviously, because he lost Levitate, which is annoying. But having a 3rd ground weakness is a big letdown, but that's why I wanted to choose the bulkier Togekiss over Staraptor, because then if they're a ground rock type, or not ground rock, that's a bad example, but say they're a ground type and they got a normal move like Thrash or something, Togekiss is going to take that a little bit better than Staraptor. It's going to be a little bit more bulky, maybe some healing. Obviously, Staraptor can learn Roost, but it's not quite the same. It does. The 3rd ground weakness does suck. It's hard to choose a 3rd Pokemon that isn't just a 6th Pokemon, sorry, that isn't just a repeat of Gen 1 or Gen 2. Could put in another Steel type, but then that's a 3rd fire weakness instead. Like I said, Ice could use Sneasel. Weavile, it's a 3rd fire weakness instead. So you got to pick your team. You either choose an electric type, which is good for water, and then flying types, weak to ground. Choose a poison type, which is good for fairies, grass, and things, weak to ground. Choose an ice type, which is good against flying, ground, grass, like really handy, good offensive type. These are all good offensive types, but have one glare and weakness that kind of is similar between them all. Either like light, electric or ground or something, but then quite frail, very offensive typings that kind of fill the void of just getting those extra resistances out of the way, but then do make your team have a 3-time weakness, like a 3 Pokemon weakness to 1 type, which is a bit of a letdown. Saying that though, I do think Drapion is quite on the bulky side. He's not a bulky Pokemon, but he's got enough bulk to take a hit, maybe take an Earthquake from a lower level or unevolved Pokemon, roughly the same, and then live that, and then still do big damage with Night Slash or Cross Poison. Obviously, Cross Poison is probably not ideal on a ground type, but Night Slash is fantastic. Does big damage, stab, high crit chance. If you get a scope lens and he's got Sniper, he's critting like, I think it's like 50% of the time or something. It's really high crit chance, which is really nice, because then you're going to one-shot this ground type because before he can hit you, because ground types are generally quite slow. But even if you do take a hit, then you can still kill twice. Like, you're faster always, so if you don't kill, you don't get a crit or something, they attack you, you can live one hit and then still kill. So it's not the hugest letdown. It's not like you used a Sneasel that would get flamethrowed on and die, just sneezed on and got obliterated. You don't want to add another fighting weakness. Obviously, you do have Togekiss to counteract that, but it's just, it's not worth it. I think Drapion probably is the better choice, because then you don't want to have a fighting and fire weakness, whereas Drapion's just ground. It's one 3 Pokemon weakness, not 2 3 Pokemon weakness, which is much, much worse. So hopefully you did enjoy this team. Obviously, there are a lot of other Pokemon that you could run instead. Could always run an electric type over a grass type. Obviously, being the grass starter, you don't really want to do that. But like I said, you could run Weavile. You could run Houndoom. We know Houndoom's in the game. Could run Rapidash, which is pretty standard. Obviously, you get that quite late, which is quite annoying. Like, Ponyta to level 42 is not ideal in my situation, I think. I feel like I want a fire type well before then, because the second gym is grass, which obviously not going to get one probably before that point. But the 6th gym is steel. Like, you don't want to be out, because you get obviously Lucario then, and he's not, like, he's fighting, it's good, but obviously ground Torterra is going to be the big carry. Being grass and ground, very offensive, quite bulky still, very slow, but Earthquake is fantastic. Leaf Storm is good. If he's running Wood Hammer, he's doing massive damage. He's got a couple of moves. He's got Leech Seed or Synthesis for healing, so he stays alive, he does big damage, and he heals. Obviously, you want a flying type to combat that electric weakness, or the ground, weakness, so you can be immune to it. And obviously, it is a story game. We're not talking about competitive sense. So if they have a ground type on their team and you switch into a flying type, they're probably not going to switch out. They're going to stay in, and your flying type, like Staraptor or Togekiss, can probably deal with a ground type quite easily. So hopefully you did enjoy this video going through the, I'm not going to say the recommended, but I'm going to say a recommended team build for being a Turtwig starter. You got obviously the 3 core typing, as in grass, water, and fire. Having a flying type to get rid of that ground immunity. We've got Lucario, which is a great staple in any team. Mixed attacker, quite fast, does big damage. And then we've got Drapion as a cheeky late game pull, who does big damage, big crits, decent typing, 1 weakness. It happens to be a 3 Pokemon weakness to ground though, which is annoying, but it is there. So hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. Make sure you comment down below your thoughts on each Pokemon and who you plan on running in the new BDSP Pokemon games coming out in like 3 weeks. And as always, take it easy.